Hello and welcome to Modern World History Syllabus B. And in this video, we will be continuing with the League of Nations and will discuss what were the League's successes and its eventual failures. Beginning with the successes, it is without a doubt certain that though the League of Nations was an extremely flawed entity, it did some good, most notably through two of its organs, named the Commissions and Committees and the Permanent Court of International Justice. Under the Commissions and Committees Department, numerous organizations were formed that sought to improve human life. The International Labour Organization, for example, was led by Albert Thomas, and it fought to guarantee every employed individual with a livable minimum wage, retirement pensions, 48-hour-long working weeks, as well as sickness benefits. Then there was also the Health Organization, which was the precursor to the WHO of today. And among many things, it investigated epidemics, and in one notable case, it managed to combat and contain a typhus outbreak in Russia, which, if left unhindered, may have wreaked havoc across post-World War I Europe. Moreover, the Refugee Organization, led by Norwegian explorer Fridtjof Nansen, helped around 500,000 prisoners of war reach home and set up camps in Turkey to accommodate those prisoners who couldn't immediately. The Refugee Organization also played a key part in 1933 by helping refugees fleeing Nazi Germany looking for asylum as extremism grew in the country. Going to the Court of Justice, the League of Nations was very successful in dealing with and sorting out political disputes. Here are some of the examples. One such scenario was the dispute between Sweden and Finland over the ownership of the Åland Islands, and the League gave out the verdict in favor of Finland. Another such political dispute was between Germany and Poland over the ownership of the highly sought after and industrialized region of Upper Silesia in 1921. In this case, the League of Nations decided to have the territory partitioned between the two across communal guidelines. One time, Greece's forces had violated Bulgarian sovereignty, and as comeuppance for their unruly behavior, the League of Nations made Greece withdraw from Bulgaria and also paid the nation compensation for the act as well. Though these victories may seem significant in nature, and they were, these political disputes didn't trouble the League, as all of the nations mentioned above didn't dare challenge the League's authority, and hence never tested out how far exactly could the League of Nations exercise the verdict of it, the weightage of their verdicts, and that was soon about to change. During its formative years, the League of Nations appeared to be an extremely intimidating force or organization, but two such events were to occur that will soon shatter that illusion completely. Two early events that confirmed the League's weaknesses of having no means of enforcing their verdicts were the Corfu and Vilna incidents. In the Vilna Incident, which occurred in 1920, Polish troops had invaded Lithuania and taken over the city of Vilna. The League demanded that Poland withdraw from Lithuania, but their verdicts were overruled by the Conference of Ambassadors, who were very much out of their place, and Poland got to keep Vilna till 1939. And in the Corfu incident, Italy and Greece had a skirmish near the border in 1923, where Italy bombarded and took over Corfu. Though the League expressed their favoritism of the Greeks as being in the right in the skirmish, the Conference of Ambassadors showed a preference to the Italian case instead, and the League was powerless to make Italy withdraw and had its authority challenged by the Conference of Ambassadors once more. Now, one may ask, what exactly were the reasons behind the League of Nations being so unsuccessful in dealing with these two cases while it had much success with the rest? One such reason was that its creation was too closely tied with the Treaty of Versailles. As the Treaty of Versailles was the legal document that created the League, The entity was vastly seen as one made solely for the benefit of the victorious Entente powers, i.e., being UK and France. Moreover, this always put the League in a difficult spot, having to defend the continued existence of an obviously flawed peace treaty. Furthermore, as the Treaty of Versailles failed to deliver on the promise of significant Italian territorial expansion, nor did it allow Germany to join the League of Nations, it had made some powerful enemies from the get go. Secondly, and this is one of the more significant reasons, the idea of a League of Nations was rejected by the United States of America and its Congress, the very nation which was previously adamant and fixated on creating it, as the USA had a significant German immigrant population that did not like the Treaty of Versailles. Successfully joining the League would have been hard as is, but the destruction caused by World War I caused the US population and hence the Senate and Congress to be apprehensive of meddling in global and especially European affairs any longer. This caused the League of Nations to lose a very important member and reduced its legitimacy in the eyes of many nations around the globe. The League also explicitly forcibly keeping some countries, and especially significant ones at that, out of the League didn't help their case either. Germany wasn't allowed to join the League of Nations till 1926, and the USSR, which was the largest country on earth, wasn't even recognized as one till the 1930s. This purposeful exclusion made the whole thing look like a French-British affair and reaffirmed the speculation of the League of Nations being only for the victors to abuse their powers. Furthermore, the existence and interference of the Conference of Ambassadors proved to be most troublesome as well. The Conference of Ambassadors was originally built solely to deal with the problems that arose through the implementation of the Treaty of Versailles, but in the following years after its creation, it had grown too powerful and too influential in global politics and managed to be a more respected source of arbitration than the League of Nations itself. This caused the League of Nations to clash headfirst with the Conference of Ambassadors, and then the League losing only made the League of Nations look even more pathetic. All of the above problems arose due to deliberate issues fundamentally ingrained in the existence of the League of Nations itself. It was difficult to take any action against a possible aggressor, as the chances of there being a unanimous decision of doing so was intentionally scarce. Also, the League had no military of its own, and its members had a choice of whether they wished to participate in taking an action against said aggressor. These lax and inconvenient core foundations were only strengthened by the fact that Britain and France, the ones effectively running the League, were the ones most against deploying their armed personnel for the preservation of world peace. Thus, the concept of collective security was actively rendered void in every aspect but name. With these weaknesses of the League made evident to the world through the Kofu and Vilna incidents, global powers and nations began to exercise their own free will more and more, and continued to break the covenant of the League which they had previously agreed to follow, knowing that there would be effectively no repercussions of them doing so. Hence, with each additional failure of the League of Nations, its credibility diminished exponentially till the world had abandoned their trust in the organization completely. The first global power to break the covenant was Japan, when they invaded and took over Manchuria from China in 1931. Though China appealed to the League, and the League demanded that Japan withdrew its troops from Chinese territory, Japan refused. Soon, the League came up with a compromise instead and proposed sending in an independent commission to objectively investigate the whole affair. This was done so in an attempt to appease Japan and not let the whole thing escalate to something more violent. Japan, however, rejected this proposal as well and soon left the League. No sanctions were ever imposed upon Japan, and nor was any military action taken by the League for breaking the covenant. This was due to the poor military and financial positions Britain and France found themselves in post World War I, which made them hesitant in engaging in any conflict that didn't directly affect them or their colonies. The second country to do so was Germany in the World Disarmament Conferences from 1932 to 1933. It was decided after World War I that all nations would reduce their armaments for peaceful times. However, the following decade saw a growth in military expenditures instead. Germany was the only one that had followed through with their word, and they rightfully, in this case at least, demanded that its neighbors should follow suit as well, with France most vocally flat out stating that any possibility of that being the case does not seem likely for the 8 years into the foreseeable future for certain. Hitler had finally found Germany a legitimate dispute to take it out of the League. This not only reinforced the assumption about the League being only for the benefit of the victors of World War I, but also gave an extremely fascist Germany sympathy and support from the global community when the League instead was admonished. The final event that cemented the League as truly useless was the Italian invasion of Abyssinia in 1935. Though the League of Nations condemned the act and Britain and France both had placed sanctions upon Italy, those sanctions included nothing of note as materials and goods such as oil, steel, and petrol were still being traded. Moreover, the Italians obviously used the Suez Canal for the invasion expeditions, which was under British control. Thus, it would have been impossible that the invasion could have gone through without the implicit approval from the British at least. This event highlighted the fact that the League of Nations truly did not care about the existence and rights of small countries in any capacity. Britain and France still hadn't fully recovered from the effects the Great War had on them. Yet, and both alien colonial empires wanted to avoid any confrontation with Italy if possible. They had tried to appease the nation with the reduced sanctions to avoid Italy forming a strong relationship with Germany. A possible alliance between the two nations was a growing concern for Britain and France. However, the plan backfired, and Mussolini, Italy's prime minister, took offense to the sanctions nonetheless, and soon pulled Italy out of the League of Nations as well. Finally certain that the League of Nations will not take any actions even in the most dire of scenarios, Hitler soon broke through the clauses of Treaty of Versailles one by one, and by 1937 the inadequacies of the League had given way to an increasingly nationalistic and imperialistic world instead of one where democracy could have flourished, and the League of Nations had been competent and present to help other nations along the correct path as well.